What's that? Oh, we've just been wasting all this gold, basically.
In the green room
Kind of.
before the recording starts, we were chef's kiss of content and discussion, and now I've got nothing left.
Well, it's easy to stand on a soapbox and tell the world what's going wrong. But in court or the street in this miserable heat, we need more than just catchy songs. I want to inspire, not preach to the choir, shouting the slogans righteous and solemn, reading the books and joining the column, aware of our troubles but not how to solve them. And sometimes I feel like I'm part of the problem, like I'm part of the problem.
There we go. Yeah, so as always, great to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks, my man. Appreciate it loads.
Yeah, anytime, anytime.
And to be honest, like there's so much more to talk about because what you find out with geopolitics is that everything's connected. So you know, trying to understand how America is reacting to Ukraine and interacting with Ukraine and Russia, you need to understand what's going on domestically as well, and understand what what Trump wants. And then there's this like massive movement towards autocracy in America. In every single domain of the American society, there's a move towards autocracy. Then how does that work with Ukraine, who is fighting against that? And when you know, the US should be fighting against Russia, but they seem to be wanting to emulate Russia. And
Well, I
so
think
we need, you know, it's understanding it all.
having Trump and Putin as two guys who believe in empire, right? And he's Trump's got himself surrounded with this weird cadre of kind of, neo Templars and so him saying something like, "Oh yeah, we're going to have an MMA fight in this new thing I'm going to build at the White House." That is straight up gladiatorial combat on the White House lawn. Like it gets to the point where you're going to be like, he'd think it's pretty cool if he gets to decide whether the one guy kills the other guy, right? Like that he thinks that would be cool.
He's
And
such an emperor dictator wannabe.
yeah, so
Yeah, and you know, and if you're sending the National Guard into Washington because you're genuinely worried about crime and homelessness, well, why are you spending $200 million on a ballroom appendage to the White House? You want to spend $200 million on homelessness in Washington? That would be a good thing to do. But you know, he doesn't really care about that. He just wants to be an emperor.
like the homeless, like the nightly overnight homeless population in DC was something like 800 people out of a city of what, three quarters of a million?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah. No,
yeah.
it's all ridiculous.
Yeah. It's very, very, very worrying. I am really actually concerned for the United States because so many things are being undone in a way that you can't easily see them being rebuilt quickly. And you're wondering whether much of what is being undone are the checks and balances that keep Trump in line to at least some degree. And then you're worried about elections going forward and a free press. Like it's all, you know, the announcement of that ABC and NBC should have their licenses revoked
There
is an assault on the press.
in a lot of what this Heritage Foundation stuff is pushing, a lot of people who were on the side of the the legislation that they're trying to push through are starting to realize that it's not going to be as financially advantageous for them as they thought it would be. Like the whole like charter schools and voucher school stuff that they're trying to do with the Department of Education. There's, Arizona was a pretty good test bed for that because we passed this voucher bill thing when Ducey was our governor. And that has just completely exploded our budget to the point that now they're saying these vouchers are going to cost the state like $1 billion a year.
Wow, I hadn't heard that. Interesting.
Third number of money that they're taking away from the public schools to pay for vouchers. Like it's causing cost overruns. Things were more
But
efficient with public school.
but that's the only hope. The only hope for the American nation, in my opinion, is because Trump can do horrendous things like ICE taking people off the streets, although that's deeply unpopular amongst, say, independents, obviously Democrats, and some Reagan Republicans. Uh, Generally, he's going to keep that core MAGA support, that demographic that, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and still get the vote. And the only thing that's going to shift that is inflation. So when you're talking about like schools and money, and as soon as people hurt in their pocket, that seems to be the key to getting people to change their minds when they are that far deep into the rabbit hole of MAGA republicanism. And I think the only hope, sadly enough, is that the US goes through some kind of economic crisis or some kind of recession where people genuinely hurt in the pockets, and then they realize that they've been duped by Trump. But other than that, it's difficult to see the cause Trump supporters. He doesn't seem to be able to get lower than sort of 40%. Like, and the stuff he's doing is, he should be insanely unpopular.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to consider the lag of payments for, the echelon of people who actually can break into the administrative kind of hierarchy and actually push a message forward inside that Trump bubble. Like you need investors going and having dinners with these people and saying, well, like, you're losing me money now, and that wasn't the plan. So you need to reverse course on this because,
Well, and that's what happened with the sort of some of the kind of Canadian tariffs and whatnot. You get big corporations saying, don't do that, that's going to hurt, and then he kind of takes it back a little bit, but still, like, the desire's there. They just want to self-harm the American economy for just weird reasons, like just fundamentally not understanding tariffs is just one of the most bizarre things going on. But yeah, so what's clever about the big beautiful bill, of course, is that some of the things that are going to hurt the Americans the most have been timed to take place after November 2026. So that was a clever bit of GOP shenanigans there. So when it comes to November 2026, some Americans, the theory is, still won't be hurting enough from the big beautiful bill that they'll still want to support Trump. And then they vote for Trump, and then it kicks in.
A bunch of bad stuff happens. Yeah.
It's awful, man. Just you could speak endlessly. Like, we could have a 5-hour conversation about like every domain. You could talk about education, like you have. You could talk about healthcare and Medicaid and Medicare. You could talk about we didn't even touch on the purging of the DoD of, first of all, the 4-star generals earlier. Then you've got the national intelligence, the intelligence chief that's just been purged, and you got 37 Russian analysts having their security clearance taken away. Then you got the CIA having their budget, like 50% of staff are going to be going. Then the USAID funding going. Like, the US is handing the keys of soft and hard power to the Russians and the Chinese, and it's just and it's as if someone who was Russian and Chinese was in the heart of the American government. The decisions they are making look no different than if you imagine like an FSB and a Chinese agent to be pulling the strings in the Trump White House. It's incredible. And then each domain, there's stuff happening that we could talk for hours about, because it's just. And I can't stop watching American politics at the moment. It's like a massive car crash on the other side of the motorway. I can't look at it. I can't. It's horrific. Oh, I have to look at it.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
I mean, we are seeing the march towards autocracy. That is it too not simplistic? Is it right to draw the parallel between the 1930s and in Germany? Because I'm fairly sure these are the sorts of things that took many more years to take place in Germany that are taking place at pace now in the United States.
Right. Well, I think we've got about we've got a good year of watching how Trump. One of the interesting kind of data points is going to be watch how Trump handles the World Cup in the same way that Hitler handled the Olympics, right? Like,
oh, interesting.
I mean, he's gonna, like, so how much money is he gonna dump into? Like they were talking about, oh, what other cities is he gonna, send troops into? Well, here are the cities where there are stadiums where the World Cup is going to be played. And another thing about that, another thing, well, this was an interesting thing about the whole FIFA thing that we lost track of, but I want to get back to just because I think it's interesting, is how when you watch his whole like Oval Office thing about FIFA, not once you can watch that entire thing. If you sit somebody down who doesn't watch soccer, doesn't know what's going on, doesn't follow World Cup stuff at all, and you sit them down and you show them that, and then you ask them, so who's hosting the World Cup? And you're like, well, the U.S. But like, no, it's the U.S., Canada, and Mexico are all are co-hosting the World Cup. There's events in Toronto. There's events in Mexico City. And you would not get that impression at all from anything that he said. It was the U.S., 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 U.S. It was,
And then trying, I mean, I genuinely think he wanted to keep the World Cup, but it's the idea that even Infantino handed them the World Cup and then has to do what we talked about, like South Park. Here's a bit of gold. You can handle it. I'm giving it to you because I'm letting you handle it because you're a winner. So it's this, I have to say a nice thing about you. I have to just fawn over you, give you a gift, and this is what we've all learned has to happen. But I mean, it was insane that um you've got Trump at that press gaggle saying, "Oh, we're going to try and get. Wouldn't it be great if Putin could turn up there?" But hang on, the Russian national team are not allowed to be there because the FIFA thankfully have said they were not allowed to go through qualification to go to the World Cup. So they've been banned. And then so why would the Russian dictatorial murderous leader go? And why would you want him to be there? Like, that's sickening. Like I said the other day, imagine if you are a Ukrainian who's lost your husband and you're watching and your family's been torn apart and your house has been bombed and is rubble now, and you're watching Trump fawn over a picture of Putin in the White House and saying, I want to get Putin looks really good. He looks even better than I do. I want to get this guy to the World Cup. You'd be like, you just like I it's disgusting. It's actually disgusting. Yeah. Oh, anyway, yeah. Uh, but yeah, that whole World Cup's going to be interesting to see how he plays it and whether there are going to be issues with people coming, because we've already heard of the issues of people coming through the borders, airports and being detained and all sorts of if they're going to continue doing that, then what I want to see is empty stadiums.
well, like
But that's not going to happen.
Trump and FIFA. So he's working out some sort of thing that's built into the ticket price of the game that's going to smooth things over for their visa to come visit for the game. I'm sure there's a grift there. It's Trump and FIFA.
Yeah, I mean, it's FIFA. They are corrupt. But Trump, everything with Trump is good. I mean, he's just bought what $100 million of debts, hasn't he? Recently, or bonds or whatnot. And this is why some people are saying this is why he wants to get the Fed to lower the rates, and why he keeps having to go at Jerome Powell, because you lower the rates, then the bond yield value goes up. So his $100 million becomes more, and so like everything about him is a grift.
Lower rates with more borrowing. He equates borrowing with being good because he thinks that if the rates go down, then you don't have to raise wages as much because people could borrow more. But there's a fundamental disconnect with him about how high and fast and loose you can play that game.
Yeah. And the other thing about just FIFA, like when he went to the World Club Cup final, and he took the trophy, $230,000 trophy, and he took it back to the White House, and then they had to like make a replica one, and then he pocketed a medal. Did you see him actually pocket a winner's medal? Literally, he's caught on camera stealing a winner's medal. The guy is incorrigible.
Well, but this is where him and Putin, because there's that story of Putin when the Dallas coach, he just straight up took his Super Bowl ring. Putin did.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And like that's where they're the same kind of guy.
I forgot that. Yeah, just wow, interesting parallels. It's just when you understand his psychology about wanting to be the center of everything, just be everything makes sense what he does, and when you understand his kind of fundamental lack of knowledge, and then just sense of invincibility, and you can just see what Trump does all the time, and
It
he
is
just walks.
just like, the worst case scenario of Zaphod Beeblebrox.
Right.
Yeah. Where,
So, bit of Douglas Adams.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because that character as president was completely oblivious,
yeah.
except one scheme that he had to make because he thought that he was the best thing ever, right? It was like pure narcissism with Zaphod, and it is kind of the same thing with Trump. He's just surrounded with such horrible people, right? Like
I mean, Stephen Miller is an actual fascist.
yeah, no, he's horrible. I keep waiting to see what the spitting image people are going to do with a puppet of him.
Well, see, SNL did in Trump 1.0, they had Steve Bannon behind him with the Grim Reaper with a scythe, whispering in Trump's ear. And like, I've not seen SNL recently, but who, in my opinion, Stephen Miller is running the White House. When you look at virtually all the policies, they have Stephen Miller's fingerprints over them. He is the single most important person in the White House, and I think, one of the most dangerous people in the world at the moment.
Yeah, well,
It's
so you got him, and then you've got Vance, who is just Peter Thiel's mouthpiece, right? Like, I don't think there's any real question there.
So then you start getting onto worries about Palantir, Peter Thiel. So Peter Thiel, obviously, who basically made JD Vance the senator, and then it was Peter Thiel and his cronies that convinced Trump that JD Vance should be the VP, because that wasn't Trump's pick at all. He becomes a VP. The plan is to get, and now we hear that Elon Musk is funding. He's no longer going to make an America Party this third party. That was never going to work. He's now funding JD Vance. So, JD Vance, I don't think he's got the charisma, but if you rig the elections and you control the information spaces, then you can see JD Vance being the president in 2028, and this then being part of Peter Thiel's tech authoritarianism, tech fascism, whereby he eschews democracy. He thinks liberalism is dead, and he thinks tech companies should be effectively running governments and making decisions, and JD Vance is his man. And it almost sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it's, when you look at what Palantir are doing, the company that Peter Thiel runs, and the amount of power they have, and the contracts they have, and the data they have on every individual in America. Now they've just signed a big contract with the NHS in the UK, and you're thinking Palantir are super, 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 super dangerous. And these guys are at the heart of they're either in the administration like Elon Musk was, or they're adjacent to the administration in a really dangerous way.
Or they're so tied into what the plans are. Like one of those things. The problem with Trump is that every time he'll say something small that, if you extrapolate it out, becomes ridiculous. But then, you never get a hard plan on what because it's always
so vague.
Everything is being negotiated until it's there and happens. And like he said some throwaway line about how, like, we were getting away. We're not gonna do windmills anymore. We're gonna let these people have their own power plants. And you're just like, yeah, okay, you're gonna let Elon Musk have his own nuclear power plant. That's a terrible idea, right? Like, I mean, not because there's anything wrong with nuclear power, but because as a business administrator, Elon Musk is just bad. Like, they let him have his own town in Texas to shoot rockets up, and now he's blowing shit up, and it's raining all over a national park. So, like,
it's also inflationary. So he's like, oh, because windmills are woke or whatever. So he's then putting the big beautiful bill. They stopped electric vehicle mandates. They stopped funding grants for renewables, but then they added tax onto renewables. So it's like, not only do we not want to give grants and the ability for you guys to get renewables projects up and running, we're going to punish renewables because renewables suck, right? So then, and now they're stopping like the Rhode Island wind project that's almost completed. Like, why are you doing that? So this is all inflationary, but Trump doesn't really realize this or doesn't care. So like you've got AI data centers needing like real power hungry data centers that are putting a real demand on the national grid in the US. So you need immediate power, but you can't just build a gas-fired power station. That takes like 7 years to like sort out the logistics and build. But what you can build are wind turbines and solar really freaking quickly. And he's actually stopping that. Even Fox News asked him the other day, why would you want to Zeldin or whatever his name is? Why would you want to stop power being added to the grid like that? And then he failed to answer the question at all by going, oh, base load and blah blah blah. No, we're not talking about base load. No one's saying that wind and solar are going to be the base load for the American power generation, but it's part of the mix, and it's a healthy part of the mix.
A lot of Republicans are, I assume, at some points, a certain percentage of Republicans are just going to get fed up with the anti-federalism of it, which, like here in Arizona, they wanted to build this big data center, and eventually, you want to build a big giant one of these data centers in southern Arizona. Eventually, enough people are going to go, we need that water for like other stuff because we live in a desert, and this stupid place to build that facility, just straight up dumb place to build that facility.
Yeah.
And what you're actually doing is you're putting an interesting kind of right-wing, two different sides of right-wing thought together between southern Arizona and central Arizona, Phoenix area and Tucson, where you're butting heads about, well, we need this water to grow crops and live and stuff. And they're like, so you can build that data plant, but you're going to have to give up your golf courses in Phoenix. And Phoenix is like, oh, hang on, give up the golf courses in Phoenix. Oh, I don't know about that, right? So,
but then, going back to so the idea is that his assault on renewables is actually inflationary. Like, you want to see renewables not in terms of environmentalism. Like, you can obviously make the environmental case for renewables, obviously, but actually you want to make the economic case for them. And actually the economic case is really, really positive. Like, the cost of renewables has really come down. The subsidies that go into fossil fuels are astronomical, and then you've got negative externalities. So the kind of cost of fossil fuels on like health and this and that the government ends up having to pay for through healthcare, or the taxpayers have to pay for, blah blah blah. So when you understand how much money goes in from the government into and society into fossil fuels, like, renewables really are price competitive. And so by stopping them at a time where you need to meet supply with demand with supply, this is going to be inflationary on people's energy bills. And so now apparently in the US, energy bills are going up, and that is going to be exacerbated by his assault on renewables. And hopefully at some point, again, if it hurts people in the pocket, they might have some revelation.
It does there is a small bit of his own undoing there, in that driving up the price of fossil fuels inadvertently benefits California, because people forget that they're like 10% of our oil production capacity. So like, when it comes at him from Los Angeles, there's oil money there, and I think he forgets that, because he thinks LA, it's Hollywood, that's it, that's all they make is movies and stuff. And I don't think he thinks about California oil capacity, because California's oil capacity, it basically they suck it out of the ground, they bottle it, they ship it out of California ports. The only thing that they see in Washington about it is the check when the tax bill comes in, right?
Well, yeah. So was it not Ken Paxton? Who was it the other day, like waxing lyrical about Texas and saying blah, blah, blah. And then Gavin Newsom just tweeted back like, we are the fourth largest economy in the world, all caps world. So we generate $83 billion for Washington, and you guys take $71 billion in Texas from Washington. So you got the bit, it was not Ken Paxton, who's the governor, is Abbott or someone, was just like banging on about how California sucks and Texas is amazing. And Newsom just slapped him down.
Because of them trying to redistrict Texas to give Trump to swing 5 Republican seats in the House,
which is, again, like, this is, I mean, hats off to Trump. there's nothing he can do at say that he can never hoist by his own petard. He can never be hoisted by his own petard because he can just say anything. He can say, I want 5 seats from Texas. I want you to get me them from gerrymandering now. And we're going to have a mid-census gerrymandering session. And everyone, a few Democrats spit the dummy, but generally he gets away with it. So then Gavin Newsom rightfully has to say, right, we're going to fight fire with fire. But the problem is the Republicans control more states, and these things come from state down, don't they, with gerrymandering, the redistricting. And so actually that game would be won by the Republicans if all states were to join in.
Well, I mean, so there's a lot to go into there. I don't know how that would work. It's 23-27, but the states that are primarily Democrat have more seats just because it's population based.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Still,
yeah, of course. But have they not already gerrymandered them loads? I mean, the Democrats have also gerrymandered a lot.
Because the Democratic states are the ones that have had independent redistricting.
Yeah.
So they're not as gerrymandered because the independent redistricting is usually a bipartisan commission where they sit down and they say, look, we're not going to split it up we're not going to do that. We're going to try and make a fair map. And so there's two things to consider. First, if every state does it, does that, like, where does that line go between population and how many seats each state has and whatever? I don't know, because you look at California is gigantic, New York is gigantic. If those states flip to be completely because there's plenty of Republican congressmen from upstate New York and stuff that are outside of the city. And if those guys go down and all those, then, between New York and California, that's a lot of seats right there. If Ohio does, there's somebody made a map, you could, like, the Pennsylvania right now is, I think it's like, what is it? It was 17 seats total. And right now it's like 12-6, but if they did it right, they could make it like 16-1. If the Dems did it, like, there's a lot of flipping that could go on if that would happen, And then you still have to consider the Senate, which has nothing to do with gerrymandered districts because they're all statewide seats.
And so who do you think is the best bet then to challenge Trump? Do you think Newsom is because obviously he's doing really well by commanding the information spaces, but he's Californian, so who do you think's?
Well, the thing is, okay, one thing about him being, I think my problem is I tend to think about this in terms of like a media production. Like, if you're starting the campaign now, what do you do and where do you look to for what's worked in the past in this kind of situation? And I see a governor from California trying to run against somebody who's done a whole lot of questionable things. Like, if we're in a recession and that's the run, then Gavin Newsom what the Dems should more or less do is try and recreate Reagan's 1980 campaign and have a good, robust primary, and whoever wins the top 2 seats, one makes the other one the VP. Like, I could see a path to where it's like Gavin and Beto could be a path.
I don't know if they're too similar. I don't know if you'd need. Yeah. I love Beto O'Rourke. He's great. But I think the more, because I was previously thinking Gavin Newsom is a bit California, but actually, like, he's good in debate. He's slick. He's got a good PR team around him, and he's able to come out. He comes across really well in interview. He's been doing a podcast. He's trying to reach across the aisle. So he's doing everything that he's doing everything to run as I think there is front runner.
Just parties aside, when you have this group of boomers who are very much wistful for the Reagan Republican 80s. So offering them, look, we've got a governor from California and and another, and a California, one guy from California, one guy from Texas, which is Reagan and Bush as a ticket. Like if you just think about it in terms of geography and
Yeah.
not partisanship, then
He's got the charisma, and as long as he creates a narrative,
California.
like that's what the Democrats are missing in with Kamala Harris, was having generated a story of what they wanted the US to look like. And and I'm sure they know that now. And Gavin Newsom, I would say he's got to be one of the front runners. But sorry, say Karen.
I'm just saying that, like, a California Texas ticket
Yeah,
has certainly worked before for America in terms of
yeah.
getting vote for it. Whether or not Reagan was good or bad, it worked and it was effective. And it's weird to think about it in terms of like what media savvy for 1980 looked like now, updating that to modern technology.
Yeah.
But a California governor going out and saying, here's what we need to do to fix the economy, and here's how the government, which is Trump, been screwing you over. There's a media narrative there that could happen, sure.
I mean, you could say that he's a very divisive figure, Newsom. So a lot of Republicans really freaking hate Newsom. Like you go onto some of these threads of videos with Newsom in and whatnot, and you see like the visceral, like or Twitter threads or whatever. You see the visceral hate for him, but those people are never going to vote Democrat anyway, probably. So
Sure,
whatever.
Well, right, but like when Reagan did his whole, I'm from the government and you're here to help radio spots. Right. The thing that won Reagan over, because Reagan was a Democrat when he was governor of California, too, and he flipped parties. Right.
Right.
So, when he came out and did that, he was winning over Republicans, too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be very interesting. I mean, the midterms, goodness me, they can't come soon enough. Absolutely fascinating to see what happens there.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, if the House stays stalemated, it's going to be weird to see once they get back, because the first thing they have to do is vote on that Epstein shit, right? And he's just been putting that off by having Mike Johnson tell everybody to go home for summer break.
So yeah, do you think anyone is going to have the guts to cross the party line, to cross the aisle at all? Do you think there are, because there are people like Tom Tillis, Senator, he's now, because he's not going to run again after 26, he's like suddenly feels free to, and then you got people like Don Bacon, who's like a real pro-Ukrainian guy. He's not going to run again as a representative, and he's now starting. So you get people who are not going to run being much more open and honest, but there's still this iron grip, whether it's like purposeful or not, this perception.
I feel like it's kind of like Trump had his cadre of people who were like, yeah, we're going to do this for him and he's going to take us with him. And now you've got, Carrie Lake in charge of Voice of America, who's just doing fuck all. And then Bauer, right? Like the Bauer? No, yeah, not Rusty Bowers. Who's the Biggs? Andy Biggs was our guy here. He's trying to run for governor, which means he's not running for his seat again. So, there's
some interest. There are some interesting things like Sherrod Brown in, I think, Ohio, isn't it? And then you got Mary Patola up in Alaska, who's been convinced to run for Senate, not for governor there, I think. Possibly putting Alaska in the mix. And so, yeah, there is a potential, like if the winds were blowing in the right direction, you might see the Democrats winning back the Senate, and they should win back the House. But the Senate's going to be much more challenging.
Yeah. But if that happens, then you're right back to, at least for those 2 years, you're into, whatever the Democratic equivalent of when Clinton was president and Newt Gingrich came out with that contract with America shit. And what does that look like if the Dems do it, like against Trump? Like, what do they do to just put a stop to Trump once they get a hold of it?
I mean, lame duck. He's there's also, and then there are people talking about impeachment again and stuff, and or certainly investigations from House controlled, uh, you know, committees and whatnot. So it could be a very interesting couple of years. And you'd assume that the Republicans know this, and that's why they're trying to rig everything to hell. So both in terms of redistricting, but also like legally and executive orders and all sorts of things that they're just. And I'm sure there are many more things they're going to be working on in those dark, smoky rooms.
Yeah, for sure. And that's
Mm.
kind of where it's at. It's gonna be interesting to watch, but it's we'll see what happens once the House comes back into session. Because until then, I I mean, it's not like Mike Johnson. He's too wormy and mealy to do anything. Like he's not going to be the guy.
He's got no balls, that man. And I mean, the biggest challenge, and kind of this circles back to kind of what we first said when in the green room before we started recording, was that um, you've got Fox News I think one of the biggest problems for the Democrats is the grip on Fox News that MAGA has, that the Republicans have, and that means that they control the such a vital information space, and in a fragmented online information space, people just get sucked into bubbles, and that's very, the Democrats just don't control any of these spaces in a significant enough way, and I worry that they still don't, and that's still, I think that's the biggest challenge personally.
Which gets into the whole thing. Like I did a thing for Only Sky last month about the whole Colbert thing, because that is indicative of what political voices have a say in where and how that's working. And if it is just a money thing, right? Like, it's like we're the rich people and we decide that we want you to be popular, so here's a bunch of money and we'll spend the money to do the advertising to make and just appeal to the dumb masses with entertainment. Then
I mean, yeah, there's such there's a sidebar here that one could talk about with regard to how amazingly Trump has been able to get money from all sorts of places. So it started with the inauguration. Well, it started obviously with the campaign and Elon Musk and 290 million and all sorts of millions, and even going to the fossil fuel industry and saying, "Hey, give me a million and I'll give you a policy," type thing. And then you had these frivolous lawsuits such as ABC with George Stephanopoulos, and then Disney just paying out $15 million, even though that if they'd taken that to court, Trump would have easily lost that. But it's like, here's $15 million now you're on our side, right? Now we're cool. And so that's Disney paying off Trump directly. Then you've got the CBS debacle with the interview of Kamala Harris, which absolutely one of the worst
yeah,
legal cases you can ever imagine. But then Paramount want to merge with Skydance, and that's worth gazillions of spondoolies. So they're like, oh, well, here's $15 million, $16 million, and another 30 million odd dollars of public service announcements.
huge problem to be had with the fact that so much of this money is money that is money from loans that were borrowed against crypto, and how quickly that could just go to crap.
Well, yeah, I mean, but then you can talk about World Liberty Foundation, and it is the money. So the latest is that 50% of his net wealth has been generated since January the 20th, and that doesn't give you an indication of outright corruption. I don't know what does. You've got a billionaire president where 50% of his wealth now, today, has been generated since he became president. Like, that is outrageous, and the American people should be deeply, deeply pissed off at that. But if it's our guy, it's fine, because like the whole idea that Americans are frustrated millionaires, like the idea is, oh, I could be a millionaire, but it just, so they look at someone like Trump making money and evading taxes, and they're like, yeah, that could be me, I could be that. So they don't mind it if it's their guy, but if it's the other guys, it's like, screw you. And so that just breeds all sorts of hypocrisy, but like this weird situation where in any other country, that would be, unless it was a dictatorship, that would be absolutely outrageous what Trump's doing.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a big. Well, that's why a lot of people are saying, like, oh, he's clearly setting up to not leave with all the, the Rose Garden stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm still somewhat convinced that that's just, what that's what he thinks being president is going around and decorating.
I
Like,
think you're true. I think I'd agree with that.
yeah, like he has to make proclamations. So if they don't have a proclamation for him to go out and shill, then he'll just be like, okay, change that lamp, change, right? Like he just goes around ordering stuff, and so
He just like when he went to Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and he's just like saying, "Oh, what a wonderful place! Look at all this gold, blah blah blah." You're like, he just loves that crap, and he's so susceptible. He is the parody of a dictator.
yeah.
He's like if Sacha Baron Cohen makes a film of a dictator, like if he updated the dictator film. I mean, there's a great quote from I think Dictator or that Sacha Baron Cohen film that where it was written to be a parody on the US, but it's so applicable to the US now. It's just like Trump is a parody of himself, or I don't know. It's just it's insane.
That I think that no one expects the level of petty that he's actually willing to be about things, like especially like like decorating the White House, right? He took uh bush Bush Jr., Obama, and Biden's paintings from the Hall of Paintings and just kind of moved them and put them under a staircase.
Yeah.
That is, why is the president even taking time out of his day to do something like that?
Because that is like it's hit for him. It is perception and power, and like those are the things that float his boat because that is that important to him.
But
Like when he was caught on the hot mic with Steve Ducey or Peter Ducey in that plane saying, "Oh, Ducey said, are you going to invite Kim?" And I think it was this Trump 1.0. You're going to invite Kim to the White House. And he said, "Oh, Kim Jong Un, I wish my people could stand up with a straight back just like they do for Kim or whatever." Like he's literally telling you that he wants to be a dictator like these people, and he wants everyone to stand up with a straight back, and he had that 250th birthday or whatever parade, and he wanted it to be some massive like Russian or Chinese or North Korean military parade, and it was just a damp squib, and it was like pretty pathetic. And that would have pissed him off, right? But that's what he wants. So moving pictures around, doing this, but yeah, $200 million on a ballroom, having a USC fight in
all
he's
spectacle.
his own reality TV show.
Yeah. Well, that was the other part of the Zelensky meeting the other day was like with all the EU people there, like he staged all the pictures so it looked like an episode of The Apprentice where he was behind the desk and they were all saying, and there was very much that he had that which one am I gonna fire kind of vibe to him. And that's what he wanted it to be. And it's like you can't fire the heads of other countries. You can't fire the head of the UN. You can't like and he doesn't.
But this then goes back to his misunderstanding of tariffs. He like genuinely thinks that he can tax another country. Like, I still think he doesn't understand tariffs. And if he does, he's just incredible in the way that he can just lie to like, it is going to be inflationary. It's obviously going to be inflationary, and you are obviously like who literally pays the excise duty. It is an American entity, so you are taxing Americans. So, oh, look at how many billions of dollars we made. And I had a word to them, and they didn't know where $29 billion were. And I said, "Have you looked in the tariffs pot?" And they're like, "Look there." And I said, "How did you know that, President? You're amazing." Yeah, there was 29. We're going to get hundreds of billions, and it's going to help the deficit. You are congratulating yourself for taxing Americans. It's like, look how much we've raised from taxing Americans. Insane.
Right. But, I mean, well, yeah, but I mean, the thing is that it's a hidden tax and it's a regressive tax is the problem. It's not that I have a problem with taxing Americans, but it is such a regressive tax the way he's doing it that it ends up like you're setting up for moving more wealth more quickly from the bottom to the top, and that
Yeah, and but it's not that tariffs are bad either. Like strategically positioned tariff, most people are fine with them. But it's just the idea that it is something that it's not. Like he just can't help but lie about everything, or at least disinform people or misinform. Because I never quite know whether he knows or doesn't know these things. That's a frustration. It's like, come on, let's have some truth and honesty and integrity back in the White House.
Yeah, and I think there's also I think there's a contingent of people who look at how the stuff that Trump does plays out in the economy and see how it can be advantageous without stopping to think we could do other things with the money that are like rather than hire a bunch of rather than have ICE hire a bunch of agents to go harass people in all over the country, you could take that same money, hire those same people, and have them, like build homeless shelters. Or there's ways to do this that is just better for everyone.
But then that doesn't. This is where it comes back to Stephen Miller. Mate, Stephen Miller is making the decisions here. This is Stephen Miller's wet dream, right? And then you worry about like Steve Bannon on camera the other day saying, and you got Democrats and I don't know mainstream MSNBC or whatever worrying that ICE are going to be at voting booths. Damn right they're going to be. So so some people dismiss Steve Bannon. I don't think that's wise. He is. I still think integral to the kind of MAGA world, and much of what is taking place in the Trump administration now is the result of the thinking of Steve Bannon. And when he says that you're damn right, ICE are going to be, they're just going to become this internal security services. And when you blur the difference between army and police, the army is to kind of police people outside of the country, and the police is to keep people safe within the country. And then if you're blurring that line, then it's just a very, very ominous sign, I think. And you're starting to look literally like Russia. And this is a problem. You to get back to Ukraine is that it's so annoying that Ukraine are clearly the good guys, Russia clearly the bad guys. Russia should be very clearly labeled as the bad guys. You refuse to do that. You kind of give lip service to supporting Ukraine, and you're only really supporting them because the rest of the Western world is pressuring you to do so. But in reality, you want your country to look exactly like Russia, and you've got just recently a couple of things changed. So the government website in the US suddenly was missing the habeas corpus part of the Constitution. Like, why would that be the case? So that's rather coincidental. And then the Human Rights Report has dropped some of the worst elements of the Russians' human rights abuses. Like, why would you? And then they're saying that Germany is more oppressive than El Salvador. It's like, what? So you're starting to see your allies as like more oppressive kind of nation states than El Salvador and Russia. Like, everything seems to be priming the United States towards embracing authoritarianism, and it's only like the European nations and I think the power that they have that is keeping Trump in check to some degree.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that worried me about the whole meeting in Alaska thing was that there was part of me that's just like, oh, he's just going to like they're just going to talk about building a bridge right across the Bering Strait and having open trade between the US and Russia across Alaska.
Yeah. And they were ready to do that. Sorry to interrupt, but they're ready to do that because of the original 5 people they were going to have at the meeting, and it got whittled down to 3. But it was going to include Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick, right? So the Treasury Secretary and the Commerce Secretary. Howard Lutnick at a freaking meeting with Putin in the Kremlin and Sergei Lavrov. You got bloody Howard Lutnick there. What are you planning on doing? So it really was a case of like, yeah, let's carve up some commerce and fuck Ukraine. Don't really give a shit about Ukraine. Let's talk doing business. So anyway.
Yeah, and that was definitely part of the plan, and part of the reason why. And then the problem is that if you gain that, especially if you think about them both as like just being emperor type mindsets, where like okay, so we start doing trade with Russia into Alaska. Well, now Trump's going to say, well, we may as well have this part of Canada because we're the ones that are shipping everything through there anyway, and we're paying for the roads and stuff. So you may as well just let us have it, And that's
which so then you're like, well, maybe they don't mind Russia having part of Ukraine, because it gives the US permission to have this kind of, on the one hand, the US is isolationist in its outlook, but on the other hand, it's actually expansionist, imperialist. What they're isolationists in they don't want to do work with allies around the world, but because they want to be an empire again, where they want to just go to Canada and create that as a 51st state, go to Greenland and take that because of natural resources and security, and so you've got this kind of weird dichotomy of a weird contradiction of like isolationist, expansionist, but really Trump would happily be expansionist. And it goes back to your idea earlier of carving up the world, where he just sees Europe as something that should be carved up between the Chinese empire, the Russian empire, and the American empire. And Ukraine's at the forefront of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. So we're about an hour over. We went through like another hour after Andy left. So I think we'll call it there.
Yeah, well, yeah, sorry to have led you on, but you can turn it into 2 parts, and yeah, or whatever. But I appreciate you giving me the time, and as you know, we could easily just sit here and chew the cud for another 5 hours, because that's how screwed up the world is.
There's always something to talk about, but yeah,
time for a cup of tea.
It is. What am I gonna do? You know.
Well, look, man, if you ever want to have another chat around the houses, talking about anything and everything, I'm always available, man.
Yeah. I'll hit you up next available opportunity.
Cool beans.
All right. Talk to you.
Big love, man. Thank you.
So let's stop depending on some happy ending, shouting the slogans righteous and